This is Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're with us today. We begin our program with Tim Donnelly, member of the California State Assembly. Sir, we thank you so much for joining us. He has also announced his intention to explore a run for the governor. That race will be held in 2014. But sadly, we must talk about just a devastating incident that occurred in your community as part of the Christopher Dorner rampage. An officer who you actually knew was killed in the San Bernardino Mountains. You were there the next day. Sir, I'm so sorry for your community's loss, but talk to us about that.
Yeah, you know, everybody watched this on television. It went down on February 12th, and the officer who was killed, Jeremiah McKay, deputy with the San Bernardino Sheriffs, he actually had moved up to being a detective. He started at the Twin Peaks station. That was really his first post.
A half mile from your house.
Half mile from
your
my house.
Sure.
And, you know, he grew up in our town. He went to Rim High School. He was a huge part of our community. He just had that gregarious way. He was a guy, you just take a look at him. He's a baby face with a big smile. And you know what he did? He would perform at the funerals of other cops doing the bagpipes. He was part of this Emerald Brigade that they had put together. And he was interviewed as soon as the I think it was Friday afternoon, the Friday before he was killed. He was interviewed by Time Magazine.
You're kidding.
They were up there covering the manhunt, and you know, when I flew home, you don't quite know what to do in those situations. So I said, you know, I just need to stop by the Twin Peaks station because I know they're devastated. And I stopped by and I said, you know, I'm just here to pay my respects. And one of the officers there, one of the deputies, he said, you know, for us, even though we lost a brother, we consider this a success in that no more civilians had to die before this evil was stopped.
No, I mean, in a lot of ways, you know, he lost for a greater cause. I mean, the work of the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department is, you know, I'm not an expert, but from what I hear, is considered to have been just valiant.
And you know, at the funeral, there was just something that his best friend got up there and he talked about it. He brought these two huge sheepdog up there, and he said, you know, my friend Jeremiah was a sheepdog, and in order to do that, you have to be part wolf. And the idea is that in order to stop somebody who loves and gets a thrill off being violent and killing people and doing this evil, he said you have to be someone who loves people but also has that violent side but also knows how to restrain it. Well, this is a guy who charged into the fray. Everybody knew how dangerous this guy was. If he hadn't stopped in there and gone in there after him the way that he did, and the other officer, Deputy Alex Collins from the Big Bear Station, also in my district, was severely injured. You know, just what incredible sacrifice to think about these guys that get up every day. They don't worry about the fact that they might not come home. They don't dwell on that. They know that's a reality. Their families know that's a reality. It was terrific to see all the people who turned out and the way that they honored him.
How is your community doing?
You know, our community is strong, and it's going to go through a difficult period because this guy affected so many other people's lives. But you know what? His dad said something that I think we can all take away. He said that he had taught his son that this earth is a training ground for the hereafter, for your life in heaven. And you know, he just put it in such perspective, and it makes you pause and think, how am I living my life? How would I be remembered? What would they say about me?
But just to think that, you know, he was the one that was playing the bagpipes, and now someone had to play the bagpipes for him.
When they played those bagpipes,
forget
it was Niagara Falls. You just wouldn't be human if you didn't.
I'm so glad that you were able to visit the Twin Peaks station, and we thank you for that on behalf of California, America, and the world. I want to shift gears. It's hard to shift gears, but I do want to shift gears slightly and talk about a bill that you have proceeding through the legislature, and it deals with gun violence. It's actually a unique take on it. We know that the NRA had argued that all teachers should be armed, or at least all schools should have someone armed at the school.
Yeah, I think they proposed to hire 2 cops for every school.
So, I misspoke a bit, but
sure.
Your bill has been characterized as adopting that approach, but it's not that.
Well, not at all. Here's the thing. First of all, we have to recognize that we have a unique situation. We have people who are coming into schools determined to slaughter the innocent,
right.
and in order to get it in the headlines, they have to kill more people than were killed in the last tragedy.
Of course.
So this is not something that we dealt with 100 years ago. Not right. really. And there's a lot of proposals that are saying we should just take away guns, confiscate
right.
guns, get rid of the Second Amendment. I think we can safeguard the right of self-defense for every Californian, and at the same time put an invisible line of defense around the kids.
I mean, I was speaking with your aide, and it is a really interesting approach. Be as specific as you can.
Sure. Well, our bill, AB 202, is called the School Marshall Plan. It's not a program.
Right.
Because we want districts to adopt a plan. Right now, under the California Gun-Free School Zone Act of 1995, teachers that obtain a CCW, that's a concealed carry weapons permit, who have gone through a rigorous background check, they've also had to go through a mental evaluation. If they have that and they get written permission from their districts, they can carry on campus right now under that existing law.
So you want to tinker with it a bit?
I figure if they have the right, which they do, then what we ought to do is we ought to train them, give them additional training. And so our bill allows them districts to use general purpose funds to do that.
Right.
But the great thing is most of the sheriffs have said, hey, I would be happy to have those teachers training side by side with my officers. And there's other places like the Front Site out in Prim, Nevada, who said we'll give them the same training that they would get from law enforcement for free.
And what's interesting is a school district could adopt this plan, this program, have no teachers qualified to participate, but no one will know that.
Well, and yeah, because here's the magical part. Here's where we saw several reactions after 9/11. One was the TSA, which most
right.
people agree is kind of a disaster.
Hard to say, but
okay,
be that as it may.
But then there was the Air Marshal Plan, the Air Marshal Program, where you have anonymous armed marshals who are in plain clothes.
Or not. You just don't know.
Or not.
Right.
So the whole point of our bill is not just to train the teachers who can be armed, but also protect the fact that they have been designated as a school marshal
right,
from being publicly
right.
disclosed. So if you have an anti-gun zealot in the media who wants to put it up on a website and then make that teacher a target, then that defeats the purpose.
It's confidential.
But we want the local law enforcement to know who the teachers are, who the marshals are,
right.
and they would be training most likely with those who would be the first responders.
Can you keep it confidential?
Absolutely. Yeah. Our bill does that.
Right.
It exempts their CCW from being publicly disclosed under the Freedom of Information Act. That way, we create this invisible line of defense around the kids, and you don't know if there's one armed marshal, 2 or 10 or 0.
In some ways, I mean, I could argue that your bill is pretty progressive because you're trying to give additional training.
And I'm trying to create a deterrent.
Right.
So that there isn't, I think the gun-free school zone sign is an invitation for somebody to come in there. And I think we have a moral obligation that the next Vicky Soto, who is facing inexplicable evil in her classroom,
right.
that we not leave her defenseless.
So what are your Democratic friends saying about this bill?
You know, I believe that Democrats care about kids as much as Republicans.
But do they understand your bill? Look, I'm taking you at your word. And at your word, it seems as if this bill, just as an observer, could get bipartisan support, the way you describe it.
We're getting bipartisan support.
In the legislature?
Trying? What I would say is this. We're getting bipartisan support out among the people.
Okay.
There are a number of legislators that are open to it. And of course, they're looking at the polling. One poll indicates, it was done on a newspaper site in Ventura, that 54% of the Californians who responded on that poll were in favor of this. And it was somewhere in the 40s of people who were opposed.
It's worthy of the conversation. I hope you continue to pursue it. I'd like to see what happens.
Thanks a lot.
His name is Tim Donnelly, member of the California State Assembly. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition. This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest today is Sergio Diaz. He is the police chief for the city of Riverside. These have been very difficult days in the Inland Empire in Southern California. On February 7th, we lost Michael Crane, a police officer with the city of Riverside. On February 12th, we lost a detective with the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department, Jeremiah McKay. This all occurred as a result of the rampage of former LAPD police officer Christopher Dorner. Sir, I am so profoundly sorry for your loss, for the loss in San Bernardino County, but it's really all of our loss.
Oh, that's right, Brad. Thank you very much for your feelings.
How are you doing? How is your department doing?
Yeah, the department is doing okay. We're coming back from this. Obviously, this is the toughest thing that you can imagine, losing one of our own to a violent assault like this. And sadly, we've had to do it all too often in the last couple of years.
And let's talk about that. You became the police chief on July 1st, 2010. Within 4 or 5 months, one other officer was gunned down, Ryan Bonaminio. That was a devastating loss in a devastating situation. Similarly, a bad guy killing an officer. It wasn't a car accident. It was a very similar type of situation. To have to suffer 2 such losses. I mean, Riverside's only had 15 losses, in its history. I mean, the first loss was in 1912, and you've had 2 losses in 2.5 years.
That's right. It's amazing, and it's happenstance. I mean, this, especially this last incident, our officers were completely surprised. They weren't involved in enforcement action.
And I think it's important that we remind our viewers what exactly happened on that night, February 7th at 1 a.m.
Well, I'll try to be as brief as possible, but essentially the suspect whose his picture, his vehicle description, and so forth had been put out in the media, and he was spotted by an alert member of the public right around 1 in the morning, just a little bit past 1, in the unincorporated parts of Corona, at a convenience store there. He was refueling and getting supplies apparently, and this member of the public alerted an LAPD unit, a uniformed unit in the black and white, who also were there preparing to protect some people. The LAPD unit was alerted to this vehicle. They followed it, and the suspect turned a corner. And when the officers turned a corner, he opened up with a rifle on the officers and grazed one.
This is the LAPD officers.
The LAPD officers. So that all happens about 1 in the morning on the 7th of February, and the suspect had gotten off the freeway on Magnolia in Corona, and apparently continued on Magnolia into our city.
Right, Riverside.
Where he encountered a black and white unit with 2 officers in it.
That were literally at a stoplight. They were not involved in seeking him out, searching him out. They didn't know what was happening. I mean,
that's right.
This had happened 15 minutes earlier behind them, literally.
It had happened 15 minutes earlier, some distance away, and we believe that at the time that our officers were attacked in this cowardly ambush, they were probably listening to the All Points Bulletin, the broadcast of what had occurred in Corona. But the suspect seized the initiative, and he sought out the officers. He drove towards them, and from his truck, he fired into the police car, filling it with military rounds.
And we believe that Michael Crane died instantly. We know that Andrew Takayas, the officer that was in the driver's seat, was alive. He had survived, and as a result of heroic efforts of a Good Samaritan. Tell us what happened.
Well, that's right. Andrew was the driver. He was disabled. He couldn't move his hands or arms. And he had no control of the car, so the car started inching forward and across the street. Across the street, there happened to be a cab driver who witnessed everything that happened, witnessed the assault on the officers. And he approached the police car, put it in park, secured it, and Andrew was able to tell this bystander, "I can't use my hands, press the button on my microphone," and that's how he got out the message very quickly. And I certainly believe that had that message not gotten out when it did, our officer could have bled to death.
No doubt. There's no doubt. I mean, it's public knowledge. He was riddled with bullets.
That's correct.
Riddled. I mean, the blood loss could have been dramatic and ultimately fatal. What's remarkable about these incidents in February, both in Riverside County, in San Bernardino County, and Orange County, is how the communities have come together. The funerals, I can talk about the Riverside one specifically. I hope this word is seen for what it means, and what I intend is they were beautiful. I mean, this Riverside funeral for Mr. Crane was, I don't know what other word to use, it was beautiful.
I think it was, and I don't misinterpret that.
Right.
You know, there aren't too many things that we can do for our officers who make the final sacrifice.
Right.
My view is that we can make sure that justice is done in terms of capturing the people that hurt them. We can make sure that their families are protected. And one other thing we can do is send them off nicely.
Right.
And it doesn't fill the void that their absence leaves in us or their families, but we did our best to do an appropriate send-off. And the thing about the funeral, the most moving
Right.
thing to me was to see people lined up, and especially young people, children, students, lined up along the line of the procession.
Right. It's one thing for officers to come out from various units around the region. We would expect that. But like you said, the entire community came out to honor Michael Crane, to pray for Andrew Takayas, to honor Jeremiah McKay from San Bernardino, who we lost, to pray for Alex Collin, who is still recovering from his injuries, also from San Bernardino County. Why? Why do you think the community was so touched by this incident, these incidents?
Well, I think most people in our society, thankfully, are good people, and they understand the sacrifices that police officers make on their behalf, and how important it is that the people that keep the rest of us safe, they themselves need to be safe. But there's an additional aspect, and that is that the death of one of our heroes gives us the opportunity to talk about them. And in Michael Crane's case...
Tell us about Michael.
Well, Michael was a 34-year-old man. He was a 11-year veteran of the Riverside Police Department, very respected inside the department. He was also a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. And here's the ironic piece of this. Mike was one of the leaders in our department of safety training and tactical training. He was a member of the SWAT team. He was a field training officer.
He was training Andrew Takayas at the time.
That's correct. He was training Andrew. Andrew is, even though he was an experienced police officer, he'd been with the Inglewood Police Department 3 years. He had just come to us in December. So he was in the familiarization stage. But for all, and as we mentioned at his funeral, Mike was a big, strong, tough guy with military experience and a lot of advanced training. Never got to use that training because he was ambushed. He was ambushed. He never saw it coming. But in any case, the funeral gives us a chance to talk about him and to examine his life, his service to our country in the Marine Corps, his service in the Riverside Police Department, the kind of father that he was. He has a little boy, 10 years old, and a little girl who's 4. And we know from talking to his friends on the police department and his relatives, as dedicated as he was to being a police officer, job one for him was being dad. And I think people identify with that kind of nobility in a public servant. And in any case, I don't know why, but they sure poured out. And not only on the day of the funeral, they lined the procession with holding flags and placards and signs of support. But before then and since then, I could show you that it's a countless number of emails and texts and postcards.
Is there anything we can do to support Mr. Crane's family, Mr. Caius's family, any of your department? What can we do?
Well, you know, a lot of people have asked that, and specifically, if somebody wants to help the family, the Riverside Police Officers Association has a website, and they have opportunities. There are opportunities for the public to contribute however they'd like. You know, again with your prayers and your contributions. But
I want to thank you so much for joining us, and we send you all the love and support that we can. His name is Sergio Diaz. He is the chief of the Riverside Police Department. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition. Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, Mayor Rusty Bailey of the city of Riverside. Sir, we just spoke with Sergio Diaz, your police chief, about the tragic loss of an officer as part of the Riverside Police Department, Michael Crane. You happen to have had some connection with Andrew Takayas, who was the officer that survived the incident. How are you doing? How's the community doing in your eyes?
Well, you know, we have weathered many a storm, and this is another one, and we showed our true spirit and colors. That evening, we had a prayer vigil for the officer that lost his life and the officer that was in the hospital, and an incredible turnout from the community in front of City Hall, and showed the world that we are united in Riverside.
And Chief Diaz mentioned that one of the things that was most touching to him was on the day of the funeral, the streets of Riverside were just lined with Riversiders. Tell me what Andrew Takayas said to you when you went into his hospital room.
You know, an incredible young man, public servant, and professional. First thing he said is, "Congratulations, Mayor." You know, and I just want you to know that I worked on your campaign for City Council 5 years ago when I was a student at UCR.
This is crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, the guy has been shot up
that day, that morning,
and he manages to have the kind of frame of reference to say to you, "Congratulations."
What a spirit! What an enthusiastic soul. He's a great person, and we're hoping and praying for his full recovery.
And I understand that he's doing well. Sergio Diaz said he's doing well. His leg is having some issues. So yeah, 2 months into your tenure as mayor of Riverside, this happens. Fortunately, Riverside, like you said, has come together. I want to talk to you about the last few months. You had your first State of the City address, which I'm sure was epic on so many levels. You had been to so many of them under the tutelage of Ron Loveridge, and now you're the man. You're the man.
Well,
and
I'm a man, I'm not the man.
You know what I'm saying. So talk to us about that first State of the City.
It's an honor and privilege to represent my hometown.
Of course.
Right, and I'm a native Riversider.
Yeah, it's literally your hometown.
Born and raised here.
It's your dad's hometown?
That's right.
Is it your granddad's hometown?
He came here in 1914, so
when
almost
he was
100 years.
How old was he?
5 years old.
Okay, so
yeah.
Riverside's in the Bailey genes.
That's right, in our DNA. And,
right.
And so it's exciting, it's exhilarating and exhausting all at the same time to serve in this capacity. It's 24/7, 300,000 people in the city. Everybody has you know, a need at some point in time, and so it's fun to be able to represent my city and then problem solve and make decisions.
So fortunately for you, if I may say, you got elected at a pretty good time in that while the city has had some tough years in the past, it does feel as if that the entire Inland Empire has turned a corner economically. We see home prices ticking up, foreclosures dropping. Is that fair? Is that a fair assessment? Is that what you're seeing?
It is. Projections are for property value or property taxes to increase, sales tax to increase, which gives us more comfort level when it comes to our budget. Our budget went from $1 billion to $1.2 billion. So you can see that times are changing in Riverside.
Right. Now, obviously, one way to keep the economy strong in this region is to attract and lure business. Riverside is challenged, like all cities in California, in that it doesn't have that redevelopment tool anymore. And so what are you doing to try to lure business to Riverside?
Well, thank God we have universities and colleges here. The biggest investment, I would say, biggest economic engine that we have right now, and the potential, is the School of Medicine at UCR. So,
and let's talk about that for our viewers that don't know. God bless Tim White, who's no longer at UCR. He was the chancellor. He's now the chancellor of the CSU system. Worked tirelessly to get California's first public medical school approved in 40 years. In 40 years, and it is opening this fall.
That's it.
And explain to us why that is so valuable for this city and region.
Well, we're the City of Arts and Innovation, and so this is a chance truly to showcase the innovation through this School of Medicine, through the UCR community that has come together to support bringing this to our city, similar to bringing UCR initially to our city. And so we've got great community support. Every doctor's office that is opened is $1 million economic impact. And wherever doctors are in residence, typically is where they put up their shingle. And so that's an important piece to the economy going forward here. We're hoping to bring that to downtown Riverside, off the campus as well to
let's
support
explain
the
that,
economy there.
because recently there was a big groundbreaking.
That's right.
At Riverside Community Hospital.
That's right.
Talk to us about what that hospital represents for those that don't know, and what the groundbreaking broke.
Yeah, and my daughter was born there. My dad was born at Riverside Community Hospital.
Were you?
No, for some reason,
military?
I don't know. Something,
were you out and about?
Something happened with me. But
were you born? But you were born,
I was born
in
in Riverside.
Okay, never
yeah,
mind. But keep
yeah.
going.
So community hospital, thank God for their private investment.
Right.
Riverside went through a public investment of $1.6 billion in our Riverside Renaissance. Well,
Right.
now we're seeing the fruits of that labor on the backs of private investment,
Right.
and one of those is HCA, the private ownership of Riverside Community Hospital, $315 million commitment and investment in their 3-acre campus, I believe it is. So when you look at the freeway system, 91 freeway, it's a $100 million investment in miles, and this is a $350 million investment just in that campus in downtown Riverside.
And your hope is that UCR Med and Riverside Community will be able to partner a bit more?
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah, well, we're hoping again to have those residents in Riverside, and it's a teaching hospital
Yes,
potential and scenario, to have Riverside Community Hospital partner with the School of Medicine in the downtown, and so that catalyst for innovation and economic impact will be right in the core of downtown on Market and 14th Street. So we're looking for School of Medicine to have a footprint
I understand.
On Riverside Community Hospital grounds.
Now, the nice thing about Riverside is it's a big city, but it's not so big. It's a small city, but not so small. About 300,000 people live in Riverside. So you are able to kind of get and know your constituents, but still 300,000 is a big number, so you got to be proactive.
Yep.
Mayor Loveridge had been very proactive with what we know as Mayor's Night Out. And why reinvent the wheel? Let's continue something that's working, and you're continuing Mayor's Night Out.
I am. Just last night, we had our first Mayor's Night Out in the Casablanca neighborhood, who welcomed me, embraced me during the campaign. As you know, I walked all the neighborhoods.
You did.
27 neighborhoods in the city of Riverside. And I'll tell you, the Casablanca was the most accommodating. I would walk the streets.
Right.
They would call me into their house, feed me lunch or dinner, whatever time of day it was. And so I committed to having my first Mayor's Night Out there, and we did that last night.
What'd you do?
We brought City Hall to the neighborhood, to
Right.
the people, and they got to experience the department heads, Public Works department head, the Community Planning and Development, the area commander for the police, the city clerk, the
Right.
city attorney, the
Everyone
city
was
manager.
there.
Yeah, they were all there.
Now, I think Ron Loveridge also engaged in some bike nights or bike days.
He did walk with the mayor,
Right.
And so I've brought my
is that what it is?
personality and my interest, and I'm doing bike with the
Okay,
mayor.
that's what it is. Yeah.
So
I saw a picture of
every
the mayor
other
on a-
month. We go out on a bike ride from 9 to 11 on a Saturday morning, and the intent is to get more families and people out living a healthy lifestyle. It's as simple as coming and going on a walk, or as simple as dusting off your old bike, beach
So
cruiser, whatever you have.
That's the Bailey.
Coming on a bike ride, yeah.
That's how Bailey's changed it up.
That's it.
You did have a little mini controversy since you've been mayor, not related to you, but relating to the Mount Rubidoux Cross, a beautiful piece of Riverside history, historic piece of Riverside history, but on public land. And we know the Supreme Court has been very clear about the separation of church and state.
Yep.
The good news is, at least from my vantage point as a journalist, it seemed as if the community got together and figured it out together.
That's the Riverside way.
Right.
We
And
come together and we
so
solve problems.
I
in
spoke
that
with
respect.
Councilman Gardner. I think the cross is in his district, is that right?
Yes, yep.
And so he had mentioned that, of course, the mayor yourself was very involved. Talk to us about that Riverside Way and what the ultimate resolution was.
Certainly. So you have the Riverside Land Conservancy, the Mission and Foundation,
Right.
and Friends of Mount Rubidoux, 3 different nonprofit groups that have a connection to the cross and Mount Rubidoux
Right.
to some degree. And so they have gone out, and from bake sales and car washes to a friend of mine,
Right.
Jeremy Burkhart,
Okay.
and the Burkhart Family Trust,
Sure.
just wrote a check for $50,000 because he had a connection with his mother, taking him up there once a week to have lunch on the top of Mount Rubidoux next to the cross.
Because what's happening is Riverside is selling about, 0.66 acres or something like that. So it's not on public land.
Right.
Has it been sold?
April 11th,
Okay.
there will be a public auction. So the highest bidder will take that deed and walk away with the top of Mount Rubidoux and the cross with it.
And are there certain restrictions, or you can't get involved in?
The city has to stay at arm's length transaction, but we are opening up the public auction, and we have created the deed of ownership, and so there are some restrictions, and you have to go through the Culture Heritage Board or the City Council for any changes.
Right. Well, Mayor Bailey, we thank you for joining us. It's been an exciting few months, tough few months, but you seem to be weathering it well. His name is Rusty Bailey, Mayor of Riverside. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is Charter California Edition.